You're gearing up for a day on the water, rods ready, maybe decoys stowed. And the thought of your boat's power failing you is really the last thing on your mind.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
We've all heard those stories, right?
Yeah,
Where a dead battery just calls an early end to the whole adventure.
happens all too often, unfortunately.
So today we're zeroing in on something absolutely fundamental for, well, any angler or hunter with a boat, your batteries. Specifically, we're tackling that big question, AGM versus lithium.
Ah, yes, the big debate. It's a crucial decision, really, and one we see boat owners grappling with constantly. Having the right power source, it truly dictates your experience out there.
Exactly. And to cut through some of the noise, we've tapped into the expertise of the team at VMAX Tanks. I mean, they're advising boat owners on this stuff every single day.
That's right.
Think of this as us pulling out the essential differences, the real-world advantages, and maybe where each battery type really shines for those of you who love to fish and hunt from your boats.
Makes sense.
Our goal today is pretty straightforward: to equip you with the knowledge to confidently pick the battery tech that's, the perfect fit for your specific needs.
And to get there, it kind of helps to remember that the batteries on your boat aren't all doing the same job, right?
Right.
You've got the battery that needs to deliver that strong initial burst to start your main engine.
A cranking battery.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Then there are the batteries powering all your electronics, your fish finders, GPS, maybe even that fancy live sonar stuff.
Yeah, all the gear.
And, of course, you might have dedicated batteries just running your trolling motor, which, let's face it, can be under heavy use for hours and hours.
So when we think about choosing between AGM and lithium, are the demands really that different for a battery starting an engine versus one powering, say, a sensitive fish finder or a trolling motor running all day?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Let's dive into AGMs first. They've been the trusted workhorse for so many boat owners for a long time.
Okay, AGMs.
Yeah.
What makes them such a reliable power source?
Well, AGM, it stands for Absorbed Glass Mat. It's a type of what's called a valve-regulated lead-acid battery, or VRLA.
Oh.
Bit technical, maybe.
Uh-huh.
But for you as a boater, the key things, the benefits, are that they're completely sealed and totally maintenance-free, so no adding water ever.
Nice.
And crucially, they won't spill. That makes them much safer on a moving boat compared to the old flooded types.
Oh.
It's quite an improvement in design, actually.
Right. That sealed, no-spill design, that's a big win just for the practicalities of owning a boat. Less hassle, safer.
For sure.
And for us anglers and hunters, it sounds like there's a specific kind of AGM that's often the go-to for getting that engine roaring to life.
Precisely. A high-performance dual-purpose AGM battery is, well, frequently recommended as your starter battery.
Dual purpose.
Yeah, it's designed to give you that strong jolt of power needed to crank the engine, but it also has the capacity to run some or maybe even all of your boat's electronics. So it's a versatile option in that sense.
Gotcha. No, when we talk about how long these batteries actually last, longevity, it sounds like AGMs have a pretty impressive track record. I've heard things about VMAX AGM batteries potentially lasting, 7 to 10 years, maybe even longer.
That's absolutely right. With proper care, and this is important, by ensuring you have a battery bank that's appropriately sized for your power needs.
Right, sizing.
VMAX AGM batteries have shown remarkable durability. We're really talking about a lifespan that can indeed extend beyond 7, sometimes even 10 plus years.
Wow.
And what's interesting here is hearing directly from VMAX Tanks customers and, even their own national reps who've experienced this longevity firsthand. It really suggests that a well-engineered AGM can be a very solid long-term investment.
So, for our listeners trying to decide, maybe weigh the pros and cons, what are the key advantages of going with AGM batteries for their fishing and hunting boat? What are the real highlights?
Okay, the core strengths, they kind of boil down to a few main points.
Oh.
First, that dependable starting power. They deliver the high cranking amps you absolutely need to get going. Reliable.
Okay, starting power.
Second, that dual purpose capability offers a lot of flexibility, handling both starting and electronics from one battery, potentially.
Versatile.
Third, their proven longevity, especially from reputable brands like VMAX, that offers real peace of mind.
Durability.
And finally, they generally represent a more cost-effective initial investment compared to lithium batteries. The upfront cost is lower.
Lower cost upfront.
Okay.
That gives us a solid understanding of AGMs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's turn our attention to lithium batteries, specifically lithium iron phosphate, or LiFePO4, as you sometimes see it written.
Yep, LiFePO4.
These seem to be gaining a lot of traction in the marine world, particularly among, the really serious anglers and hunters. What's driving this popularity?
Yeah. They really are becoming popular. And the increasing popularity of lithium in marine applications, it's largely down to two key advantages: significant weight savings and enhanced performance.
Weight and performance.
Now, what's fascinating here is how these two factors directly address some of the biggest priorities for dedicated boaters.
Let's tackle that weight issue first. Anyone who's ever had to haul batteries around knows they can be seriously heavy. How much lighter are we actually talking, and what's the real impact on the boat itself?
Oh, it's substantial.
Hmm.
Lithium batteries are considerably lighter than comparable AGM batteries, often by like half or sometimes even more.
Half the weight. That's huge.
It really can be a game changer, especially for smaller boats where, every pound counts, or for anyone just wanting to optimize their boat's balance and handling.
Right.
And less weight can also lead to, well, potentially improved fuel efficiency and just better overall boat performance. Faster out of the hole, maybe sits higher in the water.
That makes total sense. A lighter boat is generally going to perform better, handle better. Now, what about the performance aspect, especially for those trolling motors that can see hours and hours of use? What's the lithium advantage there?
Yeah, this is where lithium really shines for a lot of anglers. Lithium batteries provide a remarkably consistent and higher voltage output throughout almost their entire discharge cycle.
Higher voltage. Okay, how does that translate?
Well, for example, a 12-volt lithium battery will often maintain a voltage of like 12.8 volts or even higher under load right up until it's nearly empty.
Okay.
Now, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this steady voltage directly translates to more consistent trolling motor speed and power. Think about it. No more gradual decrease in thrust as your battery drains throughout the day.
So that annoying slowdown you might experience with an AGM towards the end of the day, less of an issue with lithium.
Exactly. The power delivery just stays much more consistent, which can be crucial when you're trying to maintain a precise position or, a specific speed for fishing. Hold on that spot lock.
I can see that being huge.
And it also greatly benefits sensitive electronics, like those advanced fish finders and live scopes. They get clearer and more reliable imaging because they're receiving a stable and optimal power supply. Less interference sometimes, too.
Okay. So better pictures on the screen, too.
Potentially, yes. Consistent power helps everything run optimally. And because of this reliable power, we're seeing more and more serious anglers opt for dedicated lithium batteries, specifically just for their sensitive electronics.
That's a smart move, just isolating the power source.
Exactly. By having a dedicated lithium power source, they can ensure those crucial pieces of equipment are always performing at their absolute best and also minimize any potential electrical noise or interference from other systems on the boat.
Right. So to kind of recap the wins with lithium for our fishing and hunting listeners, what are the main takeaways?
Absolutely. So we're looking at substantial weight savings, first off, which improves boat performance and maybe even fuel economy.
Lighter boat.
We've got that consistent high voltage output, which is a huge benefit for both trolling motors, keeping them strong, and sensitive electronics, keeping them clear.
Steady power.
Then there's the significantly longer cycle life. These lithium batteries can handle literally thousands of charge and discharge cycles, far outlasting AGMs in that regard.
More cycles.
And finally, they often charge much faster. Less downtime between trips.
Faster charging. Got it. Okay, so we've looked at each type individually. Now let's try and get a clearer head-to-head comparison. You mentioned VMAX has a breakdown that really highlights the key differences for boaters side by side. Let's walk through that, starting with weight.
Right. As we've discussed, pretty straightforward here. AGM batteries are heavier, whereas lithium batteries are significantly lighter, like noticeably lighter.
And voltage output during discharge, how do they compare there?
With AGM, you'll typically see a gradual decline in voltage as the battery is used up. Lithium, on the other hand, maintains that steady higher voltage for the vast majority of its discharge cycle. Much flatter curve.
Okay. What about using these for starting the main engine? You touched on this.
Yeah, important one. High-performance dual-purpose AGM is strongly recommended for starting. It's designed for that high cranking amp delivery reliably.
And lithium.
Lithium, in general, is not recommended for starting duties, primarily because of potential issues with alternator compatibility. Not all alternators play nice with lithium charging profiles. And there's also the risk of over-discharging, which their internal battery management system, the BMS, is actually designed to prevent by shutting off.
Right, the BMS. Don't want it shutting off when you need to start. Okay, that's a really important distinction. How about powering general electronics? Fish finders, GPS, that sort of thing.
Well, AGM batteries are a perfectly reliable and cost-effective option for powering most standard boat electronics. They do the job well.
But lithium.
But lithium is often the preferred choice, especially for those really sensitive electronics where that consistent voltage can lead to optimal performance and, clearer readings on your sonar or live scope.
Okay, makes sense for the high-end gear. And when it comes to powering the trolling motor, where do they stack up?
AGM is a proven and excellent choice here, honestly.
Hmm.
It offers good performance and that solid longevity we talked about. Plenty of people run AGMs happily.
But lithium offers.
Lithium provides those key advantages of being much lighter, delivering that higher, steadier voltage for more consistent power all day, and potentially allowing for longer run times on a single charge, depending on the amp hours.
Gotcha. Lastly, you mentioned the BMS in lithium batteries. What exactly is that again, and why is it significant?
Right, the BMS, it stands for Battery Management System. It's basically an integrated electronic system, like a little computer built right into the lithium battery.
A brain for the battery.
Kind of, yeah.
Mm.
Think of it as a smart internal controller. Its job is to protect the battery from things like overcharging, overdischarging, getting too hot or too cold, and short circuits.
So safety and protection.
Exactly. AGM batteries, they don't have this kind of internal electronic protection system. The BMS is absolutely crucial for the safe operation, optimal performance, and the long lifespan of lithium batteries.
Okay, that table summary, that really clarifies the core trade-offs involved. So, with all this information in mind, how do boat owners actually go about making the right choice for their specific setup? It sounds like it might not always be a simple one or the other decision.
You've hit on a really critical point there. In many, maybe even most cases these days, the ideal power system actually involves a strategic combination of both AGM and lithium technologies.
Interesting. Okay, mixing and matching. Let's look at some common scenarios then. What's your typical recommendation for the battery that starts the main outboard or inboard engine?
For the starter battery, yeah, we pretty consistently recommend sticking with a high-performance dual-purpose AGM. It remains the most reliable and cost-effective option for providing that necessary burst of cranking power safely.
Okay, AGM for starting. Makes sense. And for the trolling motor, we've heard a lot about the benefits of lithium here. Is that the default now?
Well, lithium is definitely gaining popularity significantly for trolling motors, mainly due to the weight savings and that consistent power delivery we talked about. People love that.
But AGM is still viable.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
A high-performance AGM setup is still a very capable and often more budget-friendly alternative. It works great for many anglers.
Right. So if someone goes lithium for their trolling motor, what kind of capacity should they be looking at? Like for a typical 36-volt system?
Good question. For a 36-volt trolling motor running on lithium, you might typically look at something in the range of 80 to 100 amp hours. That's often a good starting point.
80 to 100 Fe lithium for 36V. And if they stick with AGM for that same motor?
If you're powering that same 36-volt motor with AGM, you usually need three 12-volt batteries wired in series, and typically in the 100 to maybe 135 amp hour range each.
3 big AGMs. Okay, and what about a 24-volt trolling motor system?
For a 24-volt setup, common lithium options might be two 24-volt 50 amp hour batteries in parallel, or maybe two 12-volt 100 amp hour lithiums in series. Or again, if you go with AGM, you typically use two 12-volt batteries, again, likely in that 100 to 135 amp hour range each.
Okay, those capacity guidelines are really helpful starting points. What about powering all the fish finders, the graphs, the GPS, and other onboard electronics? You mentioned dedicated batteries earlier.
Yeah, for dedicated electronics, especially if you're running multiple power-hungry units, like several large screens, or really sensitive equipment like live scopes, many serious anglers now are choosing a dedicated 100 amp hour lithium battery just for the electronics.
A separate under dilithium just for the graphs?
Yep. Or sometimes for a standalone system like a Garmin Live Scope or similar, you might even see folks using a smaller, dedicated 30 to 50 amp hour lithium battery just for that one unit. Keeps it clean.
Wow, okay. You've mentioned amp hours quite a few times now. For those of us who aren't, electrical engineers, can you break down why understanding amp hour or requirements is so critical when we're choosing these batteries?
Sure thing. Think of amp hours like the size of your boat's fuel tank, but for electricity.
Okay, a fuel tank for power. I like that.
A battery with a higher amp hour rating simply has a larger energy storage capacity. So if your electronics or your trolling motor draw a certain amount of current, which is measured in amps each hour they run,
Right.
a battery with more amp hours will be able to power them for a longer period before needing to be recharged. Makes sense, right?
Mm.
Bigger tank, longer range.
Yeah, totally.
So understanding roughly how much power your equipment typically consumes and for how long you expect to be out on the water using it, that's really essential for selecting batteries with enough amp hours to meet your needs for the whole day.
So it avoids running out of juice halfway through the trip.
Exactly. And those examples help, right? Knowing that 100 amp hours is often sufficient for dedicated electronics for a full day of fishing helps you gauge. Similarly, understanding that maybe 80 to 100 amp hours is a common starting point for a 36-volt lithium trolling motor setup gives you a basis for your calculations.
That fuel tank analogy really makes it click. Super helpful. Now, there's this common belief, or maybe misconception, that AGM batteries only really give you about 50% of their stated capacity as usable power. Is there any truth to that, or is it more nuanced?
Ah, the 50% rule. Yeah, that's a common guideline you hear, especially for maximizing the cycle life of many lead-acid batteries, including AGMs.
Okay, so it's about lifespan.
Largely, yes. But it's not necessarily a strict limitation on usable capacity, especially with high-quality deep-cycle AGMs, like the ones from VMAX tanks, while it's generally advisable not to regularly drain them completely flat.
Right, don't run them dead all the time.
These batteries can handle deeper discharges than just 50%. What's interesting is to look at the cycle life figures. You might get, say, around 1,000 charge and discharge cycles if you typically only use 50% of the battery's capacity. That's 50% depth of discharge, or DOD.
1,000 cycles, okay.
But you might still get several hundred cycles, maybe around 300 or so, even if you occasionally discharge them much more deeply, say to 80% or even 100% DOD once in a while.
Oh, okay. So you can use more. It just impacts how many times you can do it.
Precisely. The key here really comes back to proper sizing. If you know you'll consistently be drawing a lot of power day in and day out, you need to choose an AGM battery bank with enough total capacity so you're not constantly pushing them into those very deep discharge states. Size it right for your typical use.
So it's less of a hard and fast 50% limit and more about understanding that trade-off between how much capacity you use each time and how long the battery will ultimately last overall. And then, yeah, choosing the right size battery for how you typically use your boat.
You got it. That's a great way to put it.
What about lithium then, in terms of how much of their rated capacity you can actually use on a regular basis?
Lithium batteries typically offer a significantly higher usable capacity. Often you're looking at around 80%, sometimes even more, of their rated amp hours being readily available for use without drastically impacting lifespan.
80% or more usable. That's a big difference from the 50% guideline for AGM longevity.
It is. And what's also impressive is their cycle life, even at this higher depth of discharge. You can often see numbers like 2,000 to 4,000 charge and discharge cycles, even when regularly using 80% of the capacity.
2,000 to 4,000 cycles. Wow.
Yeah, it's significantly higher than AGM typically. And this higher usable capacity combined with a long cycle life is a big reason why you can often get the same amount of usable power from a lighter and physically smaller lithium battery bank compared to an equivalent AGM bank.
All right. Fewer batteries or smaller batteries needed for the same runtime.
Exactly. However, there is a small nuance worth noting. Consistently underutilizing a very, very large lithium battery, say, only using like 10% of its capacity regularly, because you way oversized it, can potentially slightly reduce its absolute maximum lifespan over the very long term. But that's a more subtle point for most users.
Interesting. So don't go ridiculously oversized with lithium either. Just size it appropriately.
Generally, yeah. Aim for a good match to your needs.
Okay. Now, a really practical question I'm sure many listeners have. Can you actually use different types of batteries on your boat at the same time? Like that common example, an AGM for starting the engine, and then lithium batteries for the trolling motor. Is that okay?
Yes, absolutely. That's perfectly fine. In fact, as we sort of discussed earlier, using a mix of battery types is often the most effective and practical way to optimize your boat's power system for your specific needs and budget.
Okay, good to know.
That exact example you gave, using a reliable AGM for starting, and then leveraging the benefits of lithium for the trolling motor and maybe dedicated electronics, that's becoming a very common and, frankly, very smart setup for a lot of boats.
But I imagine there are some important rules you absolutely need to follow if you're going to mix and match technologies like that. You can't just, wire them all together however you want, right? That sounds like trouble.
Oh, that's absolutely critical, yes. The fundamental #1 rule is never mix different battery types like AGM and lithium within the same battery bank that are wired together.
Okay, so don't wire an AGM and a lithium together in parallel or series.
Exactly. For example, you should never connect an AGM battery and a lithium battery in parallel to try and power your trolling motor together. It just won't work properly.
Why not? What happens?
They have very different charging and discharging characteristics, different internal resistances, different voltage profiles. Trying to combine them directly like that can lead to really inefficient charging, reduced performance because they fight each other, and potentially even damage to one or both of the batteries. It's just bad practice.
Okay, definite no-no there. So keep the banks separate based on chemistry.
Huh.
What about connecting multiple lithiums together or multiple AGMs?
Right. So when connecting lithium batteries together, either in series to increase voltage or in parallel to increase capacity, it's essential to use batteries of the same brand and the same capacity. That ensures they work together harmoniously and the BMS systems cooperate.
Same brand, same capacity for lithium. Got it. And for AGMs.
For AGM batteries connected in parallel, just to increase your total amp hour capacity, using different capacities is generally acceptable, though ideally they should be the same age. But for series connections with AGMs, like making a 24V or 36V bank from 12V batteries, they absolutely should be the same type, AGM, the same capacity rating, and ideally purchased around the same time so they're of a similar age and condition.
Okay, same type, capacity, and age for series AGMs. Those are really important guidelines. Good to keep in mind to avoid any costly mistakes or worse, safety issues.
Definitely.
Finally, let's talk about keeping these expensive batteries in good shape so they actually last as long as possible. Charging. What are the essential tips we need to know for charging both ADM and lithium batteries correctly?
Right charging. It's absolutely crucial for maximizing the lifespan and performance of any battery, regardless of type. The single most important piece of advice is to always use a charger that is specifically designed for or has a setting for the type of battery you are charging.
Use the right charger profile?
Exactly. Using the wrong charger type or profile, like trying to charge a lithium battery with an old charger only meant for flooded lead acid, can significantly shorten the battery's life, prevent it from fully charging, and in some cases, even create a safety hazard.
Okay, so invest in a proper charger. What about multi-battery setups?
Yeah, we highly recommend investing in a good quality multi-bank marine charger, one that allows you to select the appropriate battery type AGM, lithium, LiFePO4, etc., for each individual bank.
So each battery gets the right charge independently.
Precisely. This is particularly useful, almost essential, if you have that mixed system we talked about with maybe an AGM starter and lithium house or trolling batteries.
Any brands you'd recommend looking at for chargers?
There are several reputable brands out there. Companies like NOCO, Minn Kota, and PowerPole, for instance, offer reliable multi-bank chargers with the selectable profiles you need.
Okay. And how much power, like how many amps per bank should people look for in a charger?
That depends a bit on the battery capacity. But as a general guideline for typical marine batteries, aiming for around 10 to 15 amps per bank is often a good balance between charging speed and battery health.
Yeah.
But always refer to the specific recommendations from your battery manufacturer. They'll tell you the optimal charging current for their particular batteries.
Check the battery manual. Good advice. So the key takeaway there is really invest in a quality compatible charger. Make absolutely sure you've selected the correct charging profile for each type of battery you have connected. That sounds like essential advice for protecting your investment.
It really is.
Yeah.
Proper charging is probably the single biggest factor in getting the most life out of your batteries.
Okay. So to kind of bring everything together here, it really seems like choosing the right battery system for your boat, whether it's AGM, lithium, or a mix, it really comes down to carefully considering your individual power needs, how you actually use your boat, your budget, of course, and then weighing those distinct advantages and disadvantages of both AGM and lithium technologies.
Exactly right. AGM offers that, rock solid, reliable starting power, the flexibility of dual purpose capability in some cases, that proven durability track record, and generally a more accessible initial cost.
The reliable workhorse.
Yep. And then lithium really excels with its significant weight savings, that consistent high voltage for peak performance from motors and electronics, a much longer overall lifespan in terms of charge cycles, and those faster charging times.
Lightweight performance champ.
Something like that, yeah.
And by taking the time to really think about your typical trips, how long are you out, what gear are you running, how hard are you running it, and considering your budget, you can make a much more informed decision, one that will ultimately lead to more dependable power and hopefully just more enjoyable, less stressful time out on the water.
Precisely. It's all about finding that right balance to reliably power your specific adventures, whatever they may be.
Well, this has been an incredibly informative deep dive into the sometimes confusing world of boat batteries. Thanks for breaking that all down.
My pleasure. Happy to help clarify things.
Yeah. If any of our listeners want to explore this further, maybe check out the specific range of marine batteries available from VMAX Tanks. Where should they head?
Yeah, for detailed information, specs, and to explore their full selection of high-quality marine batteries, both AGM and lithium, we definitely encourage everyone to visit their website at www.vmaxtanks.com.
VMAXTANKSASENACTADA.com.
That's the one. Or, if they have specific questions about their boat setup, they can reach out to the VMAX team directly at info@vmaltanks.com. They have a wealth of resources and can provide really helpful personalized advice to help design the ideal power system.
Fantastic resource. Okay, and now, as we wrap up, just a final thought for you listeners to chew on as you consider your own boat and battery setup. Thinking about how you typically power your fishing and hunting trips right now, what's maybe one aspect of your current battery system that this discussion has made you reconsider?
Ooh, good question.
Or maybe looking beyond just the immediate performance of your gear. How might optimizing your boat's power system, getting it just right, fundamentally change your overall confidence and maybe just your enjoyment when you're out on the water? Something to think about. Give it some thought, and perhaps we'll see you out there, fully powered and ready for anything.